Governor Martin.
He actually did that in about 25 minutes, which is pretty phenomenal. So I know you're scheduled to start at 9:30. You want to go ahead and start? It's like 9:25. It's up to you. Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now call to order the Strategic Planning Committee. Mike, you want to call the roll?
Mr. Rood? Here. Mr. Coulson? Mrs. Frost? Mr. Hosseini? Here. Mr. Perez? Dr. Yost? Here. Mr. Martin, you have a quorum.
Okay, very good. The second item being the approval of the minutes of the meeting held on September the 16th. It's been moved and approved. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Those opposed? Okay, motion carried. Minutes are adopted. We now move on to item number 3. And at the last meeting, the Academic and Student Affairs Committee, Dr. Ari Lamont provided us with an overview of New Florida 2010, which is the name given for the short-term plan to effectively use the legislature's $12 million investment in the New Florida initiative through 3 specific programs. The first program is the Research Commercialization and Assistance Awards. The second program is the New Florida Scholars Boost Awards. And thirdly, New Florida Clustering Awards. We received word from the Florida Teaching and Research Scholarship Board had made $2 million in awards in the research commercialization category. And it is now the Board of Governors' responsibility to award the remaining $10 million for the Scholars Boost and Clustering Awards. Under leadership of Governors Pat Frost and John Rood, the committee met via teleconference on October 27th to learn more about the proposals and to receive that were received from the universities. As you're aware, Governor Frost could not be here physically today. Therefore, at this time, I would like to ask for Governor Rood to present the recommendations and may also have assistance from Ari Lamont as appropriate. At this point, I'd like to recognize Governor Rood.
Thank you. Members, you'll recall, as was mentioned on October 27th, we met by teleconference and received an update from the staff and university representatives on the Board of Governors' New Florida 2010 Clustering and Scholar Boost Award recommendations. Dr. Lamont gave us a brief synopsis with the criteria and the methodology that was used to develop the recommendations. Pat Frost also shared with us her experience and the process she went through as the governor's representative on this initiative. And I want to thank Governor Frost for the tremendous job she did and the amount of work that she put in. We had the opportunity to ask questions regarding this process, and at this time I'd like to ask Dr. Lamont to provide a brief overview of the process and the recommendations. At that time, Mr. Chairman, I believe a motion will be in order. Dr. Lamont?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Root, I won't go over the same material that I did a week ago with this committee. Just as a brief overview, let me say that on the $10 million associated with the New Florida Clustering and the New Florida Scholar Awards, we received a total of 93 proposals. This involved virtually hundreds of faculty across the state university system who expressed an interest in coming forward with their research. And we were, at the end, the Chancellor's recommendations constitute 31 projects on 45 awards. The split out between the two, the $10 million was $6.5 million for the clustering awards and $3.5 million for the Scholar Boost. The disciplinary areas covered virtually every area of STEM. 40% of the activity you would note in health-related, health care-related, or health research-related disciplines, but also present are several projects associated with aerospace, with engineering, with the Mag Lab, with several environmentally related ones, geophysical threats, smart sensors, and also a cyber infrastructure for the state. So in sum, the array of proposals that came forward was virtually staggering. And if we had had another $10 million, I think that there still would have been good proposals that would be left on the table as fundable but unfunded. I'll be happy to answer any questions. The universities are also aware that if you have questions specific to their proposals, they're ready to answer questions as well.
I had the opportunity to review several of these proposals, and I was very, very impressed. I reviewed some of them that were selected or recommended, and others that weren't. And the amount of work and the effort that went into these were really, really impressive. And if anybody had any interest in looking through some of them, I've got copies here. I also understand Governor Frost is on the phone.
You need to use the mic there.
Okay. You can't hear me?
Not very well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So did Governor Frost want to make any comments?
Pat, did you want to make comments?
Yes.
Do you want to make any comments?
No. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my comments, and I believe that we're ready for a recommendation.
Yes, sir.
Mike, just very quickly, I wanted to also commend, first of all, R.E. He very quietly helped to orchestrate working with the universities, not just the outcome, but the process. We've not done this before. And so working with R.E., the universities provided a great deal of input into the application process, the style that we used for this approach, and ultimately came up with what I agree was an outstanding outcome. At the end of the day, we realized with $10 million we could only go so far, even though that's a lot of money spread across a large system. We decided to dedicate it towards STEM initially. But as we continue to say, New Florida covers the waterfront of disciplines within the state university system and the potential impact that all of them might have on the future of Florida and economic development. We also wanted to do a good job, not only because it was a requirement of this process to use these dollars efficiently, and we ask each university in their application process to consider collaborative effort, to consider how they might put dollars into this process, public or private, to ratchet up the amount of available funding from $10 million to as large as we could get it through a matching process, not necessarily dollar for dollar, but an infusion of additional money, and then to have very aggressive deliverables. The idea here was to, at the end of the day, not only fund great projects, whether it was the Florida Scholars Boost program or the cluster projects, but at the end of the day, it was also to demonstrate the power that the state university system has by way of potential not only to impact great science and great ideas, but to also benefit the entire state by way of commercialization and opportunity for economic development collaboration. And so to that end, I think what you see today, and more importantly, what will come out of these projects at the end of the day, will be a clear demonstration of what we have been calling New Florida and the power that it has to change our state, not just our state university system. So again, I really do commend R.E. I commend Governor Frost for taking leadership on this one, the Strategic Planning Committee, and again, can't thank the universities enough because without them, this would not be as successful as it is, at least to this point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chancellor. And also I would like to commend Governor Frost and Governor Root for stepping in and coordinating the activity. And the listing, the 93 proposals that were submitted, is a very impressive list. It took a lot of work to go through and analyze and rank these proposals. So I would encourage anyone who has interest in any particular area to please take the time to take a look at them. Governor Hussaini.
Chairman Martin, I'm interested to know what the universities do, what process did they use to come up with their recommendation?
That's an excellent question.
And that is a great question, and I should have talked about that, and I'll open it up to the universities, of course, but one of the things that we did ask of them in this process was not to just forward us all applications. we felt it was important that the universities lay those applications side by side with their strategic plans, with their work plans, and make certain that there was an alignment there, so that we weren't just receiving all of the applications. What you actually saw in the in-basket were the applications we received after the universities engaged in a vetting process. It's not new to them. They do that with their federal projects, et cetera, but it provided us not only with a smaller number. That's least important. Most important is it provided us the knowledge that those applications which came to us had been scrutinized relative to what the universities believed was a part of their mission and aligned with their work plans and strategic plans. But I'd be glad to hear, as I know you would, from the universities in terms of the techniques they use to do that.
Governor, that's exactly what happened at Florida A&M. We looked at our strategic plan, our work plan, and there were two areas that were really important for the university. Of course, STEM and healthcare, but also commercialization. Over the last 2 years, there have been 5 patents produced by our faculty at Florida A&M, and so one of the grants that we submitted was to help those faculty move those patents to commercialization. Secondly, in the STEM area, in order for us to continue to make our mark here in the state of Florida, we're going to have to be able to attract and retain outstanding faculty. There are faculty that we are trying to attract, especially in engineering, and it takes startup packages, equipment, funding for graduate assistants, et cetera, in order to attract the kind of faculty that we're looking for from other institutions. And so now with one of the grants, we're able to put together a package that will help us to recruit outstanding faculty in critical STEM areas such as engineering.
Would any other presidents like to respond? Okay. The chair would entertain a motion. Recommendations.
Adopt the recommendations as presented.
Is there a second? It's been moved and second to adopt the recommendations. Any further questions? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
There will be more to come on this issue. It is important that we now take the work that has been done, put it to work, obviously at each of the universities, but also to make certain that we continue to educate the state of Florida as to what we're doing, because again, the idea is that this has broader implications for the future of our state university system. So within about a week, we'll be organizing everything that has been done, and we'll be in a position to provide even more information, more feedback. We've also got the legislature that will be coming to town very soon for organizational purposes, and we very much want them and all involved in that process to know what we've been up to and how successful it's been. So you all, but everyone, will be hearing more about this particular initiative in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, very good. Again, thank you, Dr. Lamont, and thank you, Governors Frost and Root. Okay, moving on to item number 4, academic offerings in close proximity to another university. At our last meeting, we had some lively discussion regarding academic programming in close geographical proximity to the state universities. Governor Parker, our chair, indicated that if presidents had concerns for such programs, that they should bring those issues to the chancellor. Since that time, Chancellor Brogan has had several conversations with the presidents from the University of Florida and Florida International University, Florida State and Florida Atlantic University, and Florida A&M and University of West Florida. Today we will ask the Chancellor to kind of give us a status of those discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will. Again, to recap, at the last meeting there were discussions about conversations between universities on programming. All of this is important in its own right, But as we move forward on the regulation that surrounds the issue of establishment of campuses and sites and instructional centers, et cetera, that we're also working on, it becomes even more important that as we look at that regulation, we consider where we are and where we propose to be in the future. It is a long-established tradition in the state university system that universities have not only their main campus operations and programming, but also, and there's a long litany of examples of universities moving beyond what have been historically their traditional boundaries into other parts of the state. And again, all you need to do is consider Florida State University's medical school and the fact that they have infrastructure all over the state of Florida to try to drive more doctors into rural primary care medicine. You've got IFAS, which is probably, I guess, President mentioned, the classic example of having a university located in virtually every place in the state of Florida. And you all have in your own mind other examples of how universities move beyond their traditional boundaries. As we move into the regulatory process, it is important to note here that no one wants to stop that. There are always great opportunities for partnership, collaboration beyond the traditional borders of a university. The idea is to make certain that there is a process in place to assure that as people consider those sorts of opportunities, that there are rules of engagement to make sure that we are simply doing it in a way that's efficient, effective, that doesn't create inefficiencies or unnecessary or unwarranted duplications of effort. That, again, I think is the role and responsibility of the Board of Governors. So I wanted to talk about these three today at the request of the chairwoman because they did come up at the last meeting, just to let you know. But I give you that as a backdrop so you know that this isn't just a simple update on three scenarios that involve 6 universities, but this is also, I think, a takeaway moment to recognize that as we do work toward the regulation on campuses and site creation, that we consider what sorts of things need to be in that regulation. Again, not to keep people from doing anything. That's not the point. The point is to make sure that when these things are done, that they are done in a way that will assure that they're not only in the best interest of the university, but of the system of universities. So in no particular order of import, one of the issues was the University of Florida's desire to offer a program in Miami-Dade County in affiliation with Miami-Dade College in terms of use of facilities. I can update you and let you know that not only have the presidents, President Matcher and President Rosenberg, been in collaboration, but their staff. And we have resolved the questions surrounding that one. That will be an IFAS-driven program that will be offered in that particular area. And by the way, I say to my presidents, if I'm off base with any of this, please correct me. I'm giving you my best take on where we are at any given moment with these issues. But that one seems to have been resolved to the satisfaction of Florida International University and the University of Florida as an IFAS-driven program in that particular area.
Wait, go on, Frank. I don't know if you're finished with that, but I do want to encourage the presidents that if you have any other additional comments, because Frank is kind of running through these, I'd appreciate any comments that you have for the benefit of the board. So I know I kind of looked at President Rosenberg, looked at President Match, and I think you guys are okay that you've resolved the issue.
The only comment I made, there's no issue here. There was a communication gap. So that hardly rises to the level of an issue that this board needs to be concerned about. Okay? So I just think we ought to label it correctly. FIU was unable to get the information it should have gotten relative to this program.
And that's a fair characterization. By the way, you'll find that a common thread through all three of these scenarios. What's the greater takeaway from these three scenarios is the fact that communication in each case had to be established to work through or begin to work through some of the scenarios that I'm laying out. So that's a very fair characterization. Had that communication taken place a while back and it was inadvertent, we wouldn't be having at least this part of the conversation. So as we move toward regulatory creation, What's the takeaway? The takeaway is that at the very least, we should be looking at communication between institutions when one is looking at opening programs within proximity to another public university. I mean, that's very important. It's obviously a basic blocking and tackling issue, and some would suggest, well, it is so simple, why do we need it in a regulation? That's sort of the point, isn't it? That we do need to assure that we institutionalize communication, because without that essential, it may or may not take place, and then we find ourselves in situations that become difficult, largely because the communication wasn't established up front. FSU, FAU. Florida State University has one of the better film schools in the country. That's widely known and widely regarded. Florida State University was approached by a private enterprise called Digital Domain. They have, Mr. President, as I recall, some Academy Awards to their claim. They do a great deal of work in digital film, digital animation, and they're a California-based organization, very interested in establishing a footprint in the state of Florida, or completely moving to Florida. I'm not sure which. President Barron.
The design is to have approximately 500 high-tech employees in Florida, and to move a segment of their California operation to Florida.
So an expansion to the state of Florida. So this is a little bit like the biotech industry, expanding or moving its operation to Florida. And of course, some of you may not know, Florida has a robust film industry in this state. It's been quietly established over many years, but it has grown into rather significant prominence in the world of film. So therefore, Florida State entered into negotiations and ultimately a contract with Digital Domain to provide some curriculum for Digital Domain's desire to establish not only a facility, but an education program in the city of West Palm Beach. The contract is fairly clear, fairly simple, and provides that opportunity to exist so that the faculty and administration of Florida State could create that curriculum and advise Digital Domain on how to establish a private film school in the city of Palm Beach. That is an ongoing effort. There's still issues to be worked out, as I understand it, through President Barron with Digital Domain in terms of some funding issues, et cetera. But what has been characterized in some news articles, especially in the area of West Palm Beach, as Florida State University having a school in the city of West Palm Beach is probably a bit overblown. The President has made it clear to me that what they are doing is working in collaboration with Digital Domain to, again, provide them advisement on the creation of curriculum, and also provide some opportunities once the school is established for a limited number of internships and graduate slots at that particular facility. Again, there are still funding issues that would have to be worked out in that regard. Now, that's rather a quick update on Florida State's relationship with Digital Domain, the relationship with Florida Atlantic University. Florida Atlantic University offers some programming in the area of digital film and digital animation. That obviously is in Palm Beach County. And so what we have attempted to do is try to orchestrate a relationship only for purposes of, A, making sure there's no unwarranted duplication of effort here, but also to see if there are some partnership opportunities. And by the way, that theme will spill over to my next report, which is regarding Florida A&M and University of West Florida, to see if, in fact, again, dealing with Digital Domain, a nationally regarded film organization, Florida State University, a nationally regarded film school, to see if there might be opportunities for Florida Atlantic University to engage in this arrangement to enhance what they do in the world of digital film and digital animation. So these will be ongoing conversations, three-way, not only with FSU and Digital Domain, but hopefully with Florida Atlantic University in Digital Domain, since Digital Domain is actually the one who will establish not only the facility, but also the operation of this program within the city of West Palm Beach. So more to come, I should say, on that one. Still issues to be resolved between Florida State and Digital Domain, and still opportunities, I think, for Florida Atlantic University to explore by way of potential partnership in the process. And again, before I go on to the next one, President Barron, President Saunders, I open it up to you to make sure A, I've characterized this correctly, and B, to see if you want to provide any additional input on where we go from here.
One of my concerns is a state university curriculum being developed for a for-profit entity that to this point in time has no authorization to operate in the state of Florida and will be in direct competition with another state university in that same area. And I don't believe that's been resolved.
Yeah, it is an issue that has, to my knowledge, never been taken up in the state university system, either by the Board of Regents. Again, this is to my knowledge. There's others around this table who have longer history with this than do I. But and to my knowledge, the Board of Governors, since its inception, has never taken up this issue. So by virtue of that fact, it is de facto obviously allowable. I think the President's question is it an issue we want to take up and discuss relative to where we go from here? Look, no one is trying to keep anyone from contracting with the private sector. We all do that every day in some way, shape, or form, and that's a very healthy economic development opportunity. It is simply a question that we ought to consider taking up and resolving.
First of all, I would say that I would welcome the Boggs discussion of that very point, because I do think it is a significant one. If it pleases the Board of Governors, I have a two-page description of all of the negotiations, discussions, where we sit versus where Digital Domain sits. And Digital Domain has a big vision that they have presented to Palm Beach. From our viewpoint, we see this in three pieces. The first piece is a contract through our research direct service organization to advise them on the development of curriculum. And so this is relatively simple, has been shared, and is in fact public. And this is the only agreed upon element of this effort. The second piece of this has been waiting because Florida State has not known where Digital Domain would locate. They had been negotiating heavily with West Palm Beach for a number of months to try to get as good a deal as they could, and they're basically describing this as bringing in 500 high-tech jobs, potentially having a significant number of students within a for-profit university relationship, providing space for FSU, which includes 50,000 square feet of space for which we would pay $1 for in order to occupy. This would be for 12 graduate students and for a limited number of undergraduates who are not getting degrees but would be able to go there to take 3 electives that would be there. An enormous opportunity for collaboration if we can bring this industry to Florida. We have not engaged in discussion with them about what that next steps would be to any precision, because quite frankly, until Friday, we did not know whether or not Digital Domain would actually get from the city of West Palm Beach an agreement and set forth. But if you look at what we have done with an MOU that is also part of the public record, it is this 12 graduate students 3 electives for a set of undergraduates. And Digital Domain asked the city for $15 million to partner with FSU. And so that's in the press, and it looks like we must be doing something really dramatic here, but this is to build the building that includes the FSU space. And they would have also asked for $500,000 a year for 3 years to support us locating there and having equipment there. This is a very equipment-intensive business with stages and a lot of digital equipment. It's actually, compared to other institutions around the country that have this facility, it is a modest amount of space, not really the room to grow. These elements of this have not yet been inked because those negotiations started on Friday. It is Digital Domain's intent to offer a certificate to bring in students that they could then hire. And so this is their objective because they feel that this transition to a digital world requires a considerable amount of expertise that is not really sitting there. And therefore they need to move it up a step because they imagine that this is an industry that would have impact on defense contracts, in digital humans, and everywhere else that you can imagine that they might start to contribute. So it potentially a very large industry. The third phase of this is the phase that they have described in the press as having 1,000 students and an accredited university and offering this, for which it may appear from that article that FSU is enabling them to create a profit enterprise that would compete with FAU. In point of fact, in sitting down with the dean and with our provost, we have actually advised them that this would be a very lengthy process and is probably not the best way for them to do it. And as a matter of fact, maybe this should just be a part of the degree offerings that are at FSU, not that broad set of courses, but film, for which we have a world-renowned program. It's quite possible that they will go off on with another for-profit and partner for some of those courses and just have the digital laboratory within that building. It's quite possible that they will look at their business model and decide that they have a growing industry and have the talent pool coming in there, and they're not going to operate a university at all. And in point of fact, FSU has no agreement on that third phase. That third piece is what Digital Domain has presented to the city of West Palm Beach in their plans. So from our viewpoint, we are looking at our MFA program in film and looking to add those graduate students and provide some electives for some undergraduates as part of Torchlight programs. They're getting other FSU degrees. And we're advising them on what it would take to develop a curriculum in this area. And we have the city of West Palm Beach giving Digital Domain the space for us to have that set of graduate students there and have a full-blown digital laboratory in that space. I should also point out that our suspicion is to run this program will take between $1 and $2 million. We don't have a lot of investment dollars right now. So it is not even identified that we have the resources to do this on an ongoing basis. That's why this is in a discussion mode. So my personal feeling is that despite what West Palm Beach Post newspaper has said, FSU is not trying to sell something to Digital Domain and have Digital Domain then compete with FAU. I cannot speak for the corporation for what they plan to do. I can only tell you what our contract says and what our MOU says, and to tell you that we have gone no farther than that. But I have a 2-page description of every step, including the timeline, so that you can see this if it pleases the board.
Any questions from Governor Hussaini?
We have President Sanders. Does FAU has the same program?
Film and in digital animation.
So I can see that the people at the university, the faculty, the staff, the students, read the newspaper articles, especially with the faculty, and say, where do we stand? Are we going to lose our students? Are we not going to? I mean, there is going to be lots of uncertainty on this when they read the newspaper. So I recommend that the President Sanders and President Barron to get together and maybe come with their own, article and press release that the third part of this whole thing, it is nothing that it's been planned by the universities, but Florida State. I think it's a huge leap for the corporation to come up and making a statement like that, and not hearing from Florida State. So people out there assume that's what's going to happen, and just it does clearly shows that uncertainty that what's going to happen with FAU. I think definitely need to be some collaboration among the two universities in this.
I'd like to ask President Barron, I thought page 3 of the contract agreement spoke specifically about a staging, a timeline of the Digital Domain Institute becoming a degree offering for-profit entity in the state of Florida. So that's not a stage 3, that was in the first agreement.
There is absolutely no doubt that Digital Domain has announced a broad plan, and they have asked us to advise them on the development of that plan. But I can tell you, and I put it in writing, and I would be happy to certify it in any way I can conceivably say it, we have actually suggested to them that this would be a long decade process to create a certified program that stood in that direction, and that it may just not be worth it when they can get their workforce needs set by other mechanisms. So even though Digital Domain is asking for advice on that part of the timeline, this is not FSU creating that program or selling them a curriculum. It is purely in that contract advising them on their plans.
Well, the contract was for 2 years for $37,500 a month, over $800,000, with the timeline included in there to create a curriculum for the Digital Domain Institute and for them to become a degree offering entity within the state. So maybe in your conversations that's not what you're doing, but that's certainly what's on paper.
I don't think we're capable of creating a full-blown curriculum by July 2011. I mean, we're not capable. We're advising them on the development of that curriculum. We're not giving them a curriculum.
Governor Edwards.
Yeah, I don't think we're getting very far in a hurry here. I would certainly hope that President Barron, there would be a way for you to bring Florida Atlantic into these discussions with Digital Domain. I don't know if they have or not. Maybe you already have. This is the kind of thing that, in my personal opinion, should only come back to this board if there's a real serious, as President Matchin said earlier, a real serious problem. Certainly, if there's one thing I've learned in 35 years of being involved here, the stronger our system is, stronger our individual universities is. When our system was ranked 7th in the country, our individual universities shared a much higher ranking. So to me, this is not a problem, this is an opportunity. But I think from our board's perspective, both presidents need to understand you're much better off solving this than trying to bring it back to us, because we don't know what's going on. We haven't read the contract, and we shouldn't. But certainly, it appears to me that there could be a tremendous opportunity for both of these universities to become involved in this. We've offered joint programs in prior history, and hopefully we will again. But I don't sense that, even though the Chancellor has attempted to mediate here, that there's been much progress. But my suggestion would be the two of you need to get together, talk about this, figure out if there's a role for FAU here. There might not be. I don't know. We're not capable of making that decision because nobody in this room knows. But certainly, I understand FAU's concern here, and I also understand the position you're in. Whenever we have our universities that have these statewide jurisdictions, it's always going to be a problem.
I forgot. I'm sorry.
Governor Stalwart has a comment.
Governor Martin's in charge. I forgot.
I fully agree with Governor Edwards. In just my 3 years on this Board of Governors, I've come to really understand our university presidents. Very capable, very understanding, outstanding people. And I think communication is what's needed here. I think we've got to have the university communicate with each other, let them know what's involved and how some things can be misunderstood. So I fully agree with your comments, Governor Edwards. I'm reminded of a story about, what's the big deal? I'm reminded of the alum who took his girlfriend to her first college football game. And at the end of the game, he asked her, well, what did you think? She said, well, it was exciting. I liked the tight pants that they wore. Said, but most important, what I didn't understand is at the beginning they flip a coin, and during the game they keep saying, get the quarterback, get the quarterback. And she said, what's the big deal? It's only 25 cents. We have to have an understanding here. and I recommend it highly. Thank you.
I also completely agree with what Governor Edwards' comments were. I think the opportunity for collaboration there for students across the state are likely enormous if this industry actually settles in Florida and they make the investment that they're intending to make. I think, there's just huge possibilities there. And these are very high-paying jobs. And so I have no concerns at all with FAU faculty and students being involved. It is not exactly my call, but I have absolutely no issue with it whatsoever.
Governor Tripp.
Just quickly, I think it's the same issue that we just talked about with the first one, communication. Everybody is in lead sometime. They obviously came to you. They wanted to deal with you. And so I think, if we look back at it, wouldn't it have been nice? They came to you. They wanted to deal with you. And if you had picked up the phone and said to the president of FAU, we have this opportunity. They want to deal with us. We think there's an opportunity for the students in this state, because I think that's the most important thing. We're going to pursue it. Would you like to work with us in this? Maybe there's an opportunity where we can collaborate, because that's what Ann Duncan has been trying to do throughout the system, and we probably wouldn't even be talking about it. And then the press ran, the statements were the graduate of FSU was so excited that she was bringing FSU in, and everything got out of whack. But I think it's a great opportunity. I think exactly it's not an issue. I think it's exactly what President Mason said. It's a communication situation, and I doubt that at the end of the day, the two of you can't figure out how this really can work so everybody is satisfied.
Yes.
I think a lot of us will be watching this very closely. I would hope it would be win-win, but what I hear is potentially a formula to hollow out the state university system. And I think that is a board matter. I think it's a policy matter. And it's something that we should, at some point, as it moves forward, have a larger and more systemic, focused conversation about. And the reason I say that, and that the presidents, I know I'll be watching this very closely, because this opens up great opportunities around the state for every university. And I think that while that may be consistent with the entrepreneurship that is desired, it may be inconsistent if it's not done correctly. The other thing that I think is very important here that I heard in terms of the hollowing out is that again, I want to applaud the entrepreneurship, but if there is revenue and building funds to be developed and partnered with at a local level, that's a significant opportunity at a system level for us to further address capacity challenges that we have across the next few years, particularly as our enrollments grow. So it's not clear to me that this is only a question that can or should be addressed at the local level, because the board has the opportunity to bring more resources into the system and for the state if we listen right and then perhaps have a more, if you will, focused approach to that. So I think it can be win-win. Quarter doesn't buy much, Governor. So, I do think it's a much broader issue, quite candidly, than we may understand.
And if I may, I guess my concern is that in listening to the conversation here this morning, yes, communication is a problem to make sure that each side clearly understands. But even the reaching out for one university to become engaged, this is a tremendous economic opportunity, I think, for the state, where the system should also be involved in those discussions, because what if there may be additional state funding that could be available for this film opportunity, then we're going to have multiple universities that could participate in the process and not just one or two. So I think, maybe the site could be other than the city of West Palm Beach. There may be another location or multiple locations. So I think it rises to the state system level so that we also understand what's going on. So, Chancellor, I think that, you need to be a part of those discussions to make sure you clearly understand what the dynamics are. And I would be encouraged to see your 2 or 3 page analysis so that we also, as a board, will have a full appreciation for some of the particular issues.
Governor Martin?
Yes. Governor Harkin?
I guess a couple of questions, because it's always an issue for me in the timing of these things. So I understand that a MOU has been executed. Dr. Barron, is that correct?
At the request of West Palm Beach, they asked what was our position on this. So the MOU was sent to the mayor, and that MOU has not been agreed upon between Digital Domain and FSU, all of the terms. But basically, the MOU said that there was a willingness for FSU to have a program of about 12 graduate students as part of our MFA efforts and moving in the direction of more comprehensive understanding of digital media, and undergraduates on the order of 20 to be taking electives, already getting degrees elsewhere. So this is just added education, and that this would require space. It's Digital Domain's suggestion and negotiation with the city of West Palm Beach that West Palm Beach provide $15 million to Digital Domain to build the building, one portion of which we would occupy, and that FSU have that 50,000 square feet at the cost of $1 per year to the university. And so that part, and Digital Domain's suggestion, which they've made in the media, of providing us with $500,000 a year for 3 years to actually physically move into that space, those things have not been fully agreed upon. There was little point because West Palm Beach had not voted to provide those funds to Digital Domain until last Friday. But I will tell you that now that West Palm Beach has decided to do that, we are now engaging in a conversation to go from an MOU to the city of West Palm Beach saying that we were interested in creating a program in that space, to one where we're going to be discussing whether or not we can actually fund this graduate program. So this is definitely moved from West Palm Beach, here's what we're interested in doing as a partnership, to one which is now going to move into a negotiation for the cost to move there, to occupy the space, and actually the creation of the physical space paid for by the city of West Palm Beach to attract digital domain to the county.
Okay. So,
And I will say that the city of West Palm Beach made it a condition of that funding of digital domain. They made it a condition that FSU was a partner.